It shouldn't be a big surprise that one of the biggest political operatives running disinformation and hit pieces about Shadowgate, our whistleblowers, producers, and myself, is a former McCain 2008 social media operative.
I did do some work for the John McCain campaign, and the 2008 convention.
And Ali Akbar, a member of the Republican National Convention floor operations team.
Well, as a party, we stand unified behind John McCain.
Your film alleges that Roger Stone is connected to Cambridge Analytica. I've pointed out that that's not true and it can't be true, and that I have primary knowledge of that.
Shadowgate revealed that Cambridge Analytica was a honeypot trap for President Trump to create the false appearance his campaign used Russian military-grade social media tactics to win the 2016 election, using misattribution technology to create the false appearance.
It was so blatant because it was piloted at the same time that the RNC and the DNC were hacked. It was all formulated correctly.
I have said to you, it's all coming out, and the question is how.
I didn't conspire to leak Hillary's emails, and I have nothing to do with Russia. So,
yes.
The fact is, it looks like I did both.
Does it look like you did both?
If I wasn't me, I would say yes, that's what it looks like.
They were supposed to sway him because they were supposed to give up the goods to match the Russia hack.
Why would they be running an IA operation that would be helping Trump win?
Because then we just make it look like Russia was running the Cambridge Analytica program too.
And it admits to it right here. I am headed to Washington, D.C. for my testimony for the Mueller investigation. I definitely didn't think that while we're sitting there counting votes that some of those votes were made by people who had seen fake news stories paid for by Russia on their Facebook page. Yeah, I worked at Cambridge Analytica while they had Facebook data sets. Went to Russia one time while I worked for Cambridge. I visited Julian Assange while I worked for Cambridge. Pitched the Trump campaign and wrote the first contract. I have an email from one of our senior data scientists that said that we were actually using Facebook-like data in our modeling. The methodology was considered a weapon, weapons-grade communications tactics. Well done, Britt. Looked quite tough, and you did okay with a winky face, little emoji.
Since their whole attempt to have him employ a company to help him win and use these psychological operations that the left was using. I mean, they're doing it, we should do it. And he didn't.
And that's in the Mueller report. That's in the New York Times. There are several instances where he's rejected the opportunity to take advantage of influence operations, be it IIA supported or just your standard run-of-the-mill influence operations.
I'm more connected to Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica is a company that Bob Mercer owned. Bob Mercer has given me money in the past to conduct, certain political operations.
So it's no surprise that this same political operative has been on the financial receiving end by the former owner of Cambridge Analytica.
You called me an IIA asset, which nobody's ever pointed out what an IIA asset is. You made up a term. Nobody's ever pointed out what an IIA asset is. You made up a term so that people would cling on to it. You're a very nasty woman.
A little different perspective on the people like Jason Burmis. You can see here on the far right of the image is Jay Dyer. You have Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, Ali Akbar, All of these people were there on January 5th, inciting the crowd for what would take place on January 6th, yet none of these people are in jail somehow, but a whole bunch of average people that were incited by them are. And these guys are all connected to federal informants and have not called out that fact in any way, shape, or form, or distanced themselves from Infowars in any meaningful way.
So, in light of the recent shooting in Vegas and the obvious polarization of the left and the right that comes along with that, and on top of that, a great researcher by the name of Jesse Spots putting out an awesome video about the crime connections and money laundering connections with Infowars, and I will link that video in the description below. Check that out. So I figured it was time for me to get on it. I don't want people picking sides, thinking that the Trump side is not establishment, because it absolutely is, and this shooting would actually help the people that funded Trump. So what I'm about to talk about, Cambridge Analytica, is something I've referenced in previous videos briefly, hoping that people would actually go research themselves and maybe the grassroots movement would start, but that hasn't really happened. Okay, so what is Cambridge Analytica? Cambridge Analytica started off as a company called SCL. SCL is based out of London, right in that Oxbridge region, that crucial espionage region. And Cambridge is notorious for Russian double agents. So keep that in the back of your head. Okay, SCL is also connected to British intelligence. Also keep that in mind for a future series of videos I will do when I expose who and what Alex Jones truly is. For now, all I'm going to say is there's some real spy shit going on there. Okay, SCL is also connected to various militaries. They're very secretive about what they do, but what they do give away is that they use military psyops tactics. They use military psyops tactics. A private corporation uses military psyops tactics on domestic populations. I'm sorry, but that needs to be a huge red flag for you. Okay, a man named Robert Mercer, completely connected to British intelligence and just the deep state in general, also the chief financier of Trump's campaign, bought into SCL with a huge amount of money and became his principal owner, which resulted in the creation of Cambridge Analytica. And the psychological operations that Cambridge Analytica specializes in is data mining and micro-targeting. Okay, so what is data mining and what is micro-targeting? Data mining is when Cambridge Analytica buys everyone's data from Google, Facebook, Twitter, all the social medias, anywhere you put out data, they buy it from there. Then they run it through their algorithms to find out what the hot topics are, so then they can get Trump to talk about the hot topics. But then they also use that data to micro-target you. And what micro-targeting is, when they find an issue that you're passionate about, an issue they can get an emotional response on, they use that and they fill your feed up with what you're passionate. Let's say you're passionate about gun control and you're constantly on Facebook talking about gun control. They begin to micro-target you by filling your feed, unknowing to you, filling your feed with articles about how Trump is going to end gun control and save your guns. So then you think, oh man, Trump's my guy. I'm super passionate about that. I'm gonna go out and vote for him. Thinking that those were organic articles. No, they were shoved down your throat by Cambridge Analytica, specifically so you would go out and vote for Trump. Okay, so that's how micro-targeting works. So Cambridge Analytica works with Aggregate IQ, which is a Canadian-based data mining company. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they work with the Rebel. Haven't seen a paper trail for that, but I think that's probably safe to assume. Guess who owns the IP address to this Aggregate IQ website? None other than the Robert Mercer. SCL used to have Aggregate IQ listed as their Canadian branch on their website. Then they took Aggregate IQ down and just left up the phone number for their Canadian branch. And when you called that phone number, it took you right back to Aggregate IQ. They've since completely removed the Canadian branch off their website. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to document that. Okay, so how does Cambridge Analytica connect to Infowars? Infowars started off by supporting Ted Cruz. Jones said that he's not perfect, but he's a patriot and he's looking out for us. Exactly what he said about Trump.
The globalist social engineers want to control your mind, your intellect. And that's why it's important that Ted Cruz has announced he's running for president, because on the policies he puts out, I agree with about 95% of it. All right, I want to play Ted Cruz's new presidential run ad that just premiered today. He gave a 30-minute speech that we have linked on Infowars.com announcing what he plans to do. But right now, let's go ahead and play this ad. Then we're going to go to a few of your calls, and then Dr. Edward Group, who we have via the video connection. Let's go ahead and go to this ad.
My story is like that of so many other American families.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ted Cruz has announced he's running for president. And I got to tell you, I like what he's running on. Very, very exciting. I know that Ted Cruz obviously isn't perfect. His wife worked at Goldman Sachs, and I know that she was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Well, there are about 10,000 members of that, and that's the globalists trying to organize all the smartest people in the country so they can control them. So if we ever discount someone because they've been part of the power structure, we have a very low probability of ever changing the culture.
100%. We'll be behind you 100%. How much political capital do you think we can gather to make action happen?
Well, the question really...
Funny enough, Cambridge Analytica and Mercer originally were fully behind Cruz, dumping all of his money into Cruz, using his data mining and micro-targeting operations for Cruz's benefit. But then, all of a sudden, Infowars and Cambridge Analytica switched to Trump. Coincidence? I think not. Cambridge Analytica and Mercer is also the main driver behind the Brexit campaign. Mercer even stated that Brexit was, in a sense, a test to see if the waters were right for a candidate like Trump. Which leads me to believe that this is a sort of council for the national policy type coup, kind of like they did with Reagan in the 80s. See, the Republicans and the Democrats, there's infighting within the elite classes, but they're the same pedophiles, they're the same people. Next video will be on the pedophile connections with Trump. So during the run-up to Brexit, Aggregate IQ was paid handsomely by all the big Leave donors to target people via social media, Twitter, Facebook, Google. That's where that campaign was run. These big Vote Leave organizations could legally pay Aggregate IQ to data mine and target people because they were based in Canada. That's a strategic location. That's what they used to do in the old MK Ultra days. Otherwise, it would totally be illegal. But since it's Canadian location, they can legally do this, like they did in the old MK Ultra days. So this is where the mind control programs have gone. They've been privatized, so there's no more FOIA requests, there's no more government linking, except there is still government connections, but it's not official government connections. They're still connected to all the good military and intelligence communities, but there's no physical connection. Okay, so SCL, the precursor or the umbrella to Cambridge Analytica, has connections has membership ranging from British intelligence to Marconi Defense, to the Pentagon, and to British Army psychological divisions. Remember, this private mind control psychological operation openly admits that they use military psyops on domestic populations for their own corporate ends. Do we see the problem here? Do we see how Trump is a deep state candidate? So what Cambridge Analytica also does is use established psychological operations like Infowars, like Breitbart, to push their agenda. They also get kickbacks. They work hand in hand. They sway you to vote in a specific way for specific ends. Whether it be making money, whether it be an agenda, there's specific ends. Now do we see how there has to be two sides to every conflict? The right was created in response to how ridiculous the left is. They do that on purpose. Cambridge Analytica and SCL is also linked to Peter Thiel's data mining company, Plantar. And of course, Peter Thiel is already in the Trump cabinet. Okay, so we see what circles these people run in. These are elitist people. These are deep state people. Okay, these are not anti-establishment candidates. They're using military psychological operations to convince you to vote for them. Okay, you're under mind control. That's what this is. This is a mind control operation. So Steve Bannon of Breitbart, Robert Mercer, and Steve Bannon will be crucial in my next video. Robert Mercer and Nigel Farage of Brexit and the UKIP movement over there have been colleagues since 2002. Okay, so these people know each other. These people are friends. They've known each other for a long time. This is a coup in a sense. If you voted for Trump or you supported Trump, I understand where you're coming from. I understand there's so many valid points being made there. It's not to say that you didn't vote for Brexit or Trump for the right reasons. What I'm trying to point out is they're put in by the deep state for a specific reason. They're still owned by these deep state people. They're still in debt to these deep state people. And these are the type of people that make money off war. Okay? So the end game for these people is probably war, whether it be domestic or international. As long as they can sell their war machines, they'll make their money. Okay? So be looking out for future conflict. Here's a direct quote from Andy Wigmore of Cambridge Analytica. He says, a Facebook like is their most potent weapon because using artificial intelligence, as we did, tells you all sorts of stuff about the individual and how to convince them with a sort of advert. And you knew there would also be other people in their network who liked what they liked. So you could spread, and then you'd follow them. The computer never stops learning, and it never stops monitoring. When the interviewer said, that's creepy, he said, yes, that is creepy. That's why I'm not on Facebook, okay? So if you think that your data, even down to what you like, isn't being shared, you're ignorant, because it is. And that's how these modern campaigns are driven. Data mining and micro-targeting. You gotta learn it. You gotta know it. So ironically, the candidate that's supposed to be anti-deep state is being driven, his whole movement is being driven by deep state British billionaires and intelligence communities. Ironically, he's the anti-establishment candidate, but in reality, it's the establishment that's pushing the whole movement. That's been my point this whole time. And yes, there's certainly a paper trail. Not only who he filled his cabinet with and the agendas that he's continued, he was put in by deep state. There is a paper trail here. So do you see how these psychological mind control operations work? The biggest thing I get from Trump supporters for why he's an anti-establishment candidate is, well, the media hates him, mainstream media hates him, so the establishment hates him. Come on, do you think they're stupid? You don't think they've data mined and figure out how many people don't trust the mainstream media? Their ratings are absolutely ridiculous. They know, they're revamping it and using it as a new tool now. They're using it to push you in a certain direction. They're using it to push you for Trump. That's how these psychological operations work. So we can't keep, falling for these advanced it's not the old days.
Defending him. You're not. I'm happy to defend him. Most of what you said is completely false. And the American people know that.
I'll run through the list of things where you
old days
Senator,
where you
please,
can just say stuff and people believe it. Look,
these are the new times. They're stepping up the deception. Continue to look into this yourself. You guys have a good one.